Welcome to Whispers of Light. We are getting into a bit of controversy. A wise man once said, most of us believe. I think for myself. But the greatest trick of influence is convincing you that you're immune to it. Today we're going to explore this statement. Now, when someone says they have free will, what exactly do they mean? They mean that they have the ability to make choices about their own behavior. In other words, that they're not simply the product of their environment or their circumstances. So here's a question for you. Do you really think that you have free will? Take a moment to consider your answer. Now let me ask you another question. What do you think is the purpose of this video? If you think it's to inform you that you don't have free will, well then you're wrong. It's not the purpose of this video. Okay, now you're probably wondering why I asked you those questions. Well, the truth is, I wanted to set up a little experiment to demonstrate just how difficult it is to convince people that they're being influenced, even when it's right in front of their faces. Okay, so let's take this one step further. Let's show some people the different brands of soda. Now, these are two very different brands with two very different reputations. Brand A is known for being high quality and sophisticated. Brand B is known for being cheap and mass-produced. And what you need to know is that Brand A is actually owned by the same people who own Brand B, but they've just hidden it. So now we're going to ask our subjects which brand they prefer. Now, the thing to pay attention to here is not their answer, but how they arrive at that answer. If the majority of them say that they like one brand better, then that tells us that people are often willing to pay more money for a product if they perceive it to be more exclusive and less mass-produced. On the other hand, if the majority of them say that they like the other brand better, then that tells us that people are often willing to sacrifice quality for price. And that's great news for a company, because they could get away with selling a cheaper product as long as they made it seem like it was somehow unique. So let's move on to the next part of our experiment, where we get our subjects to choose between two different brands of cereal. Again, we're going to use the same strategy of hiding the fact that both brands are owned by the same company. Now, these are two very different brands, with two very different reputations. Brand C is known for being healthy and natural. Brand D is known for being sugary and unhealthy. And what you need to know is that Brand C is actually owned by the same people who own Brand D, but they've just hidden it. So now we're going to ask our subjects which brand they prefer. And again, the thing to pay attention to here is not their answer, but how they arrive at that answer. If the majority of them say that they like Brand C better, then that tells us that people are often willing to pay more money for a product if they perceive it to be healthier. So on the other hand, if the majority of them say that they like Brand D better, then that tells us that people are often willing to sacrifice health for taste. And that's great news for a company, because they could get away with selling an unhealthy product as long as it tasted good. This might sound a bit wild, but hang tight because we're just getting started. Next up in our experiment, we're going to show our subjects to different brands of potato chips. Let me tell you, these brands are worlds apart. Brand G is all about that gourmet, artisanal vibe, while Brand H is your classic mass-produced, budget-friendly option. Here's the twist. Brand G is actually owned by the same folks behind Brand H. They just keep it on the down low. So let's see which brand our subjects will pick. And again, the thing to pay attention to here is not their answer, but how they arrive at that answer. If the majority of them say that they like Brand G better, then that tells us that people are often willing to pay more money for a product if they perceive it to be higher quality. On the other hand, if the majority of them say that they like Brand H better, then that tells us that people are often willing to sacrifice quality for price. And that's great news for a company, because they could get away with selling a mass-produced product as long as they made it seem like it was somehow special. And that's basically the premise behind all of the tricks of influence that we've discussed so far. Whether it's making a mass-produced product seem like it's handcrafted or a cheap product seem like it's high quality, the key is to convince people that they're immune to influence. Because if people think that they're immune to influence, then they're more likely to be influenced by it. Let's rewind and switch things up. Instead of just showing off products, how about we highlight some cool ideas? We can kick things off with a trendy fashion look, maybe a runway show or a magazine cover. Then, let's show a group that's not rocking that trend. Finally, we'll ask viewers which crew they'd want to roll with. Sounds fun, right? If most of them pick the group rocking the latest fashion, it shows that people usually go with what's popular. They want to fit in and look stylish, so they'll mimic the trendsetters. But if they lean towards the group that's not following the trend, it means they're rejecting what's in. They want to stand out and be seen as unique, so they'll vibe with the nonconformists. Next, we'll try this again with a new fashion trend we've planted. We'll first introduce a style that's not in right now, but make it look trendy. We'll show them a crew flaunting this style and another crew not wearing it. Then we'll ask them which group they'd want to join. It's all about seeing how they respond to the influence around them. If most people jump on the bandwagon of that trendy fashion, it shows how often we follow the crowd, right? They want to look stylish, so they'll mimic those rocking the latest looks. But if the majority steer clear of that trend, it's a sign they're rejecting what's not cool. They want to stand out and be seen as independent, so they'll go for styles that aren't in the spotlight. It's all about fitting in or breaking away depending on what's popular or not. Isn't that interesting? Let's dive into a new slang term that's buzzing right now. We'll kick things off by showing a group of teens casually using it, then switch to another group not using it. Finally, we'll ask which crew they'd rather hang with. Sounds fun, right? People tend to follow the crowd, right? If most of them start using a trendy slang term, it shows they want to fit in and seem cool. But if they stick to the old ways and avoid the slang, it's all about wanting to stand out and not be swayed by trends. It's interesting how we navigate what's popular versus what feels unique to us. Let's dive into a new slang term that's about to hit the scene. We'll kick things off by showing a group of teens casually tossing around this term in conversation. Then we'll switch to another group that's totally missing out. Which crew would you want to roll with? It's all about fitting in, right? If most people jump on the bandwagon and start using that slang term, it shows how folks often go with the crowd. They want to seem cool and in the loop, right? But if the majority steer clear of it, that tells us they're aiming to stand out and not just follow trends. They want to be seen as unique and not so simply swayed, so they'll ditch the slang. It's all about fitting in or being different. What about a fresh viral meme that's making waves? We'll kick things off by showing the meme without spilling the beans on its popularity. Picture this: a bunch of internet users sharing it like crazy on social media. Then we'll flip the script and show another group who's just not into it. So which crew would you rather roll with? Pretty fun, right? If most of them decide to join the group sharing the latest viral meme, it shows that people really tend to go with the flow and conform to what's hot. They want to come off as funny and in the loop, so they jump on that meme bandwagon. But if a majority opts for the group that's not sharing the meme, it tells us they're all about standing out and being original. They want to show they're not easily swayed by trends, so they'll steer clear of sharing that meme. Now let's do this again with a new viral meme we've planted. We'll kick things off by showing them a meme that isn't super popular right now, but we'll make it look trendy. Picture this: a group of internet users enthusiastically sharing it on social media. Then we'll flip it and show another group totally ignoring that meme. After that, we'll ask them which crew they'd rather hang out with. It's all about seeing how they respond to the buzz around them. If the majority of them choose to be a part of the group that's sharing the planted viral meme, then that tells us that people often conform to what's popular. In this case, they want to be seen as funny and in the know, so they're going to start sharing the meme. On the other hand, if the majority of them choose to be a part of the group that's not sharing the planted viral meme, then that tells us that people often reject what's unpopular. In this case, they want to be seen as original and not simply influenced, so they're going to avoid sharing the meme. So what does all of this tell us? Well, it tells us that most of us are not as free as we think we are. Most of us are highly susceptible to social pressure, and we often conform to what's popular even if we don't realize it. So, how can we start thinking for ourselves? First off, we need to be aware of the sneaky tricks of influence that are thrown our way. Once we get how these tricks work, we can see through them and push back. Next, let's work on building our independence. It's all about not being scared to swim against the tide and think for ourselves, even if it feels like we're the only ones doing it, and don't forget to get creative. Let's come up with our own solutions to problems, instead of simply copying what everyone else is doing. So do you still think you have free will? Or have you realized that you're not as free as you thought you were? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. And as always, thanks for watching Whispers of Light, where we ask the tough questions. Come back for part 4.